Yeah. But I'll do it. Hi, Uri. We're just about to begin, so Alana's giving an instruction. So if you two are
okay, I just wanted to welcome you all here tonight to this discussion about marriage equality in Israel and Australia. Fantastic opportunity to talk about the complex issues, probably more complex in Israel, I think, than here. But comparison will be interesting. I'm Ilana Snyder. I'm the president of the New Israel Fund in Australia. And I just want to say just a few words about our wonderful organisation. Because I know some of you, like Denise and Beck, and Sarah and Emily are all completely involved in it and know, but some of you I don't know, I'm not sure how much you know. But just the New Israel Fund began in Australia only 8 years ago. It's been in existence for 40 years, established in 1979 in San Francisco when progressive Jews saw a great opportunity for peace when Reagan made peace with Egypt, with Sadat. And it's grown enormously. It's sent over $300 million, raised more than $300 million that has funded important organisations, grassroots organisations defending democracy, social justice, equality in Israel. And it now exists in America, Canada, England, Australia, and a few countries in Europe, including Switzerland and Austria and Germany, and with ambitions now to maybe extend into South America. You know the kind of work we do. It's kind of all summed up in the Declaration of Independence, which is all about equality, complete equality for everyone in Israeli society, no matter their religion, their race, and their gender, or their sex, which is the word that's used. Maybe we use the word gender today. And with a shrinking democratic space, the work of the New Israel Fund is more important than ever, defending democracy. We've just had this crazy situation, which is another election in September, but we really have to think of the bigger picture and not get stuck in what's happening with this election and what's going to happen in September. Our goal is to defend democracy, and that's the kind of work we do, and the money that we raise in this fellowship program that Sarah is part of is our flagship program. We've got Beck here, and Beck the only person who's been in the program, and Sarah. Yeah, it's our absolute flagship program. We've got 20 young people who have already completed the program. They spend time in Israel and come back and engage with the Jewish community, with the next generation, and they're the future. And Sarah, over to you, the future of New Israel.
So, thank you guys so much for coming out. I think you get extra points for coming out on what is such a rainy day. Uri, if you don't know, it's really grey and horrible and pouring
and cold.
So the people in the room deserve amazing kudos for being here tonight. Just a little introduction about kind of getting this event together, but before that I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting tonight, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and future. So a little bit of housekeeping. We've got toilets just the first door on the left, if anyone needs to. But I'm so happy to be here tonight, despite it being rainy and gross, because I have been trying to set this event up since I came back from the fellowship trip in July last year. And I was really hoping to get it together for the 1 year anniversary of the yes vote and the results of the same-sex marriage plebiscite. And we've had a few different iterations of speakers and a few different iterations of organisations, and we finally managed today to put together what I'm sure will be a really, really interesting panel. So going from right to left, we've got Michael Barnett, who is the co-convener of Aleph Melbourne, and Aleph was founded in 1995, for anyone in the room who doesn't know. And it's a social support and advocacy group for people who identify as Jewish or have a Jewish heritage, and LGBTQI background living in around Melbourne, Australia. So on the phone, on the miracle of the working internet, we have Uri. Can you hear us, Uri?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. By the way, I am tech support and hostess for this. So I am just so pleased that my tech contraption has actually worked. So Uri is the director at Israel Chofshit, the only grassroots organisation in Israel dedicated to promoting freedom of religion and pluralism as its core democratic values. It's created in 2009. And it's an organisation that believes all forms of belief and practice amongst Jewish people are legitimate and should be accepted and supported by the State of Israel. And during my time on the New Israel Fund Fellowship tour, we heard from representatives of Israel Chofshit, which was one of the things that sparked my interest in creating this event tonight. And finally, we have Professor Paula Gerber, who's an academic at the Monash University Law Faculty, and she has been since 2004. As a professor, Paula researches, teaches, and performs leadership roles across the university, law faculty, and Pastor Center for Human Rights. So what we're going to do, because technology and internet is a little hard, is we're going to ask a few questions of Uri and speak to Uri, and then we will hang up, perhaps, hang up the virtual telephone, and we will continue the conversation here in Melbourne. So, Uri, if you're happy to, can you just give us a bit of background of Israel Chofshit and, the history of marriage and kind of civil marriage or lack of history of civil marriage in Israel?
Yeah, so just in a few words about the Israel Chofshit. So as you said, we were founded in 2009 by a group of activists who felt that the values that they believe in are not represented as needed to be in our political system in civil society. So that was sort of the initial ignition of the process that led to the organization that we are today. And I think it's also important to note, and also relevant to the context of this conversation, is that when we in Israel talk about religion and state issues, it's a very broad definition, and the definition the Israel Chofshit works on is a very broad definition. So there are sort of the more classic issues that has to do with, let's say, public sphere on Shabbat, personal status, conversion, etc. But as we see it, at least here, LGBTQ issues are well within the realm of religion and state. Women and their place in public sphere against phenomena coming from more conservative backgrounds who are trying to push women away from public sphere are deep within the realm of religion and state. Issues that I think are not as known, like the place of women serving in the IDF, in combat units and in non-combat units, are deep within the realm of religion and state. So for us, the definition is very broad, and we work on it through different strategies. And if we dive into the history of marriage in Israel, which I think is sort of the history of the way personal status is agreed upon under the Israeli law, we need to first understand that it comes from the Ottoman Empire that ruled this place before the Brits came in. And they sort of had an alignment, a legal alignment that says that sort of every religious group will have their own thing, and that will take it off the shoulders of the sort of the bigger government, meaning both Jews and Muslims and Christians all had sort of different religious courts that has to do with everything that has to do with your own personal status. And unfortunately, as we see it, this is the still system as it is today. So the basic thing that you asked me to talk about was civil marriage in Israel. I could have concluded by saying that it just does not exist at the moment. And you, as I understand, are referring to the expansion of civil marriage to the LGBTQ community. But here we are quite a few major steps behind. The initial concept does not exist.
Wonderful. So you sort of alluded to it, but it, to describe where you are, I guess, legally and politically. So legally, if you could expand a little on what the current situation is.
Yes, definitely. So if a Jewish heterosexual couple wants to get married, and we are assuming that they're acknowledged by the Chief Rabbinate of Israel as Jewish, the only way that they can marry and be registered as married by the Israeli government is going through the rabbinical system, through the rabbinut, which is a centralized system that is a government-funded, government-owned, government-controlled religious agency. That is practically controlled by I think it's fair to say, at least in part, the entire ultra-Orthodox community, and more broadly, the much more conservative streams of the religious Orthodox group in Israel, which is a not very big minority group here, which is also important to note. So that's the only way a Jewish heterosexual couple can marry. There isn't a legal way to marry if you are a part of the LGBTQ community. And the only way that you can be registered as married in Israel, if they don't accept you, or you choose not to do that through their realm, and to be registered as married, is to go abroad to countries that allow foreign citizens to marry under their current rules. So the most common action for those kinds of couples would be to go to Cyprus. And we need to also acknowledge that I think we are talking about sort of three major groups that are in action for this issue. So one, we already mentioned the LGBTQ community. Another very, very big community is the Russian-speaking community in Israel. We have 400,000 Russian-speaking Israelis who are not considered Jewish by the rabbinut. The number, of course, as demographics go, is only growing. And we have a big and growing community, which are people like myself who could have married through the rabbinut and are saying, like, we're not playing your game, and are marrying abroad or marrying outside of the rabbinut. So their status and my personal status, I didn't go to marry abroad for two main reasons. One is that I don't think that I should marry abroad, with all due respect to people living abroad in magnificent countries. But this is my home, and this is where I was born, this is where I live. So I wanted to get married here. And more important than that, if a Jewish heterosexual couple, let's say, were to marry in Cyprus, come back, register, which you must do under Israeli law, if they were to divorce, they still divorce through the chief rabbinate, meaning nothing actually was achieved. So our current situation is that we advise couples to marry in Israel, to do their own wedding. We conduct weddings. Other organizations are doing, I think, in smaller numbers, but are also doing that. And to be what is known here as common law married, which I know is also a status that exists abroad in different countries, in different shapes and sizes. But here it's a very, very strong legal status. And actually, you enjoy all the rights that a married couple enjoys in Israel. The sort of dilemmas begin if you need to go abroad. So if you need to get a visa to Australia and you need to have a spouse's visa for relocation or something, that might be a problem. We know that it's a problem in the States. It's less of a problem in the EU, or what would be the EU in a few years. I hope it will still exist. And with that being said, we see a very, very strong growing trend of people who are marrying outside of the realm of the rabbinate. So we're talking about a 6.3% decrease over the last couple of years, which is a very, it's a continuing phenomena. It's not new, and it's growing. And the numbers that we see at the moment are talking about around 2052, we will have 0% of the couples marrying in the rabbinate if the numbers continue. So I don't think we'll get there, and I guess the law will change before that will happen. But that's sort of the coalition that is working in the field of changing the legislation. And while doing that, are working bottom up to say, as long as the legislation doesn't change, we're just not playing your game anymore.
Great. So you've sort of suggested that at the moment, Israel Chofshit is really kind of suggesting to couples that they, go with common law marriage. But are there any other initiatives or campaigns or, things that Israel Chofshi has done to advance the cause?
Yeah, so we were now in the fourth year of a national-wide campaign with our colleagues at the Reform and Conservative movements here in Israel, through a national-wide campaign urging people to marry outside of the rabbinate. And we're actually, I think, promoting two different tactics or strategies to achieve the same goal. So the goal is to change legislation. And it's important to say that because we don't intend for the long run to be a service providing organization. We're very happy and very proud of doing what we do, but we don't think that on the long run, we should be providing services. We're providing that only as it fits our bigger agenda, which is to promote Jewish pluralism and to enable people to get married in their own way here in Israel. So with that being said, as I said, we're both campaigning and working to advocate to change legislation. But as we're doing that, we also believe that, as we all know, there are couples who want to get married now, and they will not wait until the legislation changes in a year or 5 or 10 or 20. And we think that they also should have a very specific solution, which is the best solution available at the moment. So we're promoting both agendas. And I think that the interesting thing to say is that one of the ways that we measure success is how much media attention issues are getting, which is a common, I think, idea. And one of the problems with couples marrying outside of the rabbinate here is that it stopped being news. And so for more and more and more media outlets, it's just not a matter of news anymore. Okay, so we had dozens of couples marrying around the same weekend. We wanted to get some media attention towards that and say, okay, guys, but yeah, we know you're marrying couples outside of the rabbinate. It's not news anymore. It's not that interesting. So for us, although it's very nice to hear that, it's also a bit frustrating because it becomes a normal thing, which again, is both good and makes it harder to work.
Wonderful. So I guess you sort of again alluded to it. You keep, signposting some of the questions I have, but how have you been measuring success, and have there been any particular campaign successes thus far?
Yeah, so actually I think that the most important recognition that we got for our success is that the Ministry of Religious Affairs named our campaign in their latest report, saying that is one of the reasons for the decrease in the numbers of couples marrying through the rabbinate. So that was very nice for us. We print screened that sentence, sent it to the donors and said, guys, we don't need to report this year. Our work is done. But the thing is that we do, I think it comes in both ways, because it is becoming more and more common, and it becomes less and less of a phenomena, and we stopped using the term, like terms that are usually used, like alternative marriage or anything around that, because we don't think that we're an alternative. We think that we're the real thing, and that we do not need to sort of message ourselves around sort of the reality. We are the reality, and we see that in the numbers. And so it's both extremely successful and becoming harder and harder to make news around that. Also, from a legislative point, it's interesting because it becomes harder to argue that it's a pushing topic, because politicians, and some of them who would like to promote it, are saying, okay, but if there is a solution, why should we prioritize this over other things? Which I think is some kind of a valid argument, but as we see it, you should promote issues that you believe you can score legislative successes through, and this is one of those issues. So we still think that promoting legislation is a very, very high priority for us.
Great. And so just finally, you know, how are you involving young Israelis from the LGBT, the communities that you named recently from the LGBTQ community, from the Russian community, to get involved with Israel Chavshit? And do you see a role for the Jewish community in the diaspora to, you know, get involved?
Yeah, so I'll say that when we talk to people about it, we say that sort of the biggest measure of activism that they can pursue is to get married out of the Rabbanut. So that's a nice slogan, and it works for people who want to get married at that point, which is a very broad audience, but it has its limitations. So we believe that also people should be promoting that in their own communities, and we have very successful cooperation with the national LGBTQ movement and the national LGBTQ organizations here, and we're promoting also like specific legal solutions to the LGBTQ community. And for the Russian-speaking community, we have a very talented in-house person who's working to do everything that Israel Chavshit is doing. We also do in Russian, not because we deeply believe that there is actually a language barrier, but I think that it helps people see that they're seen. And the vast majority of the people that we are talking to are people who are called here and are calling themselves actually generation 1.5. Those are people who either came at a very, very young age with their parents, or that have already spent the majority of their adult life in Israel. So their day-to-day life is run in Hebrew. But when they understand that an organization is talking to them specifically, it makes the engagement much easier. So that's that. And as far as diaspora Jews are concerned, so first of all, I think that being involved with the New Israel Fund is a good place to start and to move forward. And I also think that one of the biggest obstacles that we, I think, are facing is, first of all, that not usually, I'm not sure that this is the issue that gets the most coverage abroad. So issues that are harder for Israelis to understand, like issues like conversion. I think that a Jewish community abroad deals a lot with conversion and how can you be a part of the community and how does that work. I grew up in a vast majority Jewish country. I always tell people that I don't really know who is the first person I personally knew that converted. I knew that there is a thing called conversion. I knew that people are doing that. I knew that at least for sort of the community that I lived in, it wasn't a thing. So if someone was part of our community, it wasn't really important if they officially converted or not. It wasn't a thing when I grew up. And all of the things that I think are important for us to work with diaspora Jews is to sort of connect the dots between the different agenda items that are differently prioritized between the communities, because I think we're all sort of looking at the same target. We all want to have a safe, pluralistic Jewish and democratic state, and the way to get there, I think, is it would be easier to achieve when we're doing that through the issues that the Israeli public is committed to, other than other issues that I don't think are less important, but are hard. It's harder to gain support around. And I think that the first thing that I would like to ask diaspora Jews to do is to help us spread the gospel and to help us actually engage people and to help people understand that this is the situation in Israel, that there are a lot of Israelis who are fighting to do so, to do the change. And again, not specifically ourselves, but I think are very successful in doing that. So I think that would be sort of my first ask. And just creating the engagement and allowing spaces in which people learn more about Israel other than being a startup nation, et cetera, drip irrigation, and all the things that we're proud of. I just believe that at the end of the day, and also at the beginning of the day, we're a country. We have our ups and downs. We have our greatest achievements. We have our problems. But you started quoting from the Israeli Declaration of Independence, which is also the paper you see here, not in red. The red ones are my basketball team, which is not less important. But the Israeli Declaration of Independence starts by saying that in the land of Israel came the Jewish people. Be'eretz Israel kama Am Yehudi. So it doesn't say that in the land of Israel came the citizens of Israel and then sort of we started walking. And I think that if we're talking about homeland, that is everyone's homeland and it's the Jewish homeland, even if you're not an Israeli citizen, then I think that being engaged in what's happening here is a very important thing. So I hope I covered it.
Thank you. That's great, Uri. We will say goodbye to you shortly, but if anyone has a question for Uri about anything he's just spoken about, we can do that now if anyone.
Are you still optimistic? Because I get less and less, more and more pessimistic every time I visit there, and I see that the vibe, and I see that there's no communication with, like, okay, so it's my tribe in Tel Aviv that is sort of getting enlightened and everything, and everywhere else it's becoming darker and darker and darker. So is it, like, give me a reason to be optimistic. I mean, it's like, please.
So first of all, I am optimistic. And I also think that, again, what we're seeing, a lot of the things that we're seeing on religion and state issues, which isn't a specifically Israeli phenomena, we're seeing a lot of backlash, which is a common phenomena for public movements. And we see that around the world with the feminist movement, we see it with LGBTQ campaigns around the world. And we also experience our backlash. But I think that the backlash exists mainly because it's a winning campaign, it's a winning strategy, and the public is moving more and more liberal. I think that the most important thing to note is that I believe that there is the biggest gap between Israeli society and the Israeli political system is within the realm of religion and state. So I think that my belief is that eventually the public is winning, and it might take a while. But I also think that, again, for us, it's not a question if we believe that we will be able to win, first of all, because we believe and the data is on our side, but also because I don't think we have another option. Like, this is my country. And I think that as I understand that, I also need to make sure that my values prevail. So I believe that my values prevail eventually, and it might take time. But I think that from what we're seeing, every number that we know of is extremely optimistic. And some of those issues, again, make it harder to create the legislative change. But I also think that there is also a sort of a limitation to how big that gap can be. And as the public growing more and more liberal on those fronts, the political system eventually will take its place because the disconnection cannot be as big as it is.
I'm just curious to know, excuse me, if you have interaction with other religious organizations, that is, other religions.
So that's a very good question. I don't, there are quite a few Arab feminist organizations. There aren't a lot of religion and state organizations. And I also think it's something that we're developing at the moment, but I also think that the first thing we needed to understand that we're still working on sort of expanding our knowledge around is that when you're talking about religion and state, when you switch to religion, issues are extremely different. So issues like public transportation on Shabbat, or commerce on Shabbat, or the issues, sort of the halachic term of agunot, women who cannot get a divorce from their husband. All of those just does not exist when you are talking about the issues facing communities that are either Muslim or Christian. So the issues are very different, making it a bit harder to cooperate. also needs to be said that I think that, again, very, very, very generally speaking, the Knesset representatives of the Arab minority in Israel tend to be more conservative, which it sometimes creates sort of a weird alliance with the ultra-Orthodox parties on some issues, which is pretty amazing and very frustrating to see. But all that I'm saying to make sure that like we know that it's a thing. We know that the field at the moment doesn't really exist outside of like the Jewish realms. But we also think that the strategic thing to do is to develop that field, not, I would say it very blunt, not run by the Jews. Like, I don't think that I can be the driving force around religion and state issues for the Muslim minority in Israel. It's just, I don't think that it will work, and I don't think that it's my place to lead that community. So it's a big thing, and you hit a very important point.
Any other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you can see me. I'm just off the side here. I've got two questions. One is, in the context here in Australia, when we had the whole marriage equality debate over many years, we saw the polling go from about 30% acceptance through to 70 or 80% acceptance across Australia for marriage equality. And has there been polling in Israel on, you know, where the country's at in terms of that? Part one of the question. Part two is, what is the process to get this through the Knesset, the legislation?
So to your first question, the answer is that it depends on polling, but what we see is generally around either low 60s, high 60s, low 70s support for civil marriage, which is extremely high. But with that being said, to enter your next question, the legislative process needs a majority of votes in the Knesset in 3 different calls. And we also know that when we are talking about civil marriage, the actual context is extremely wide and doesn't have only to do with civil marriage. It has to do with the entire system of the rabbinical courts and of the rabbinical monopoly. So we believe that it will take time, and it will also take a lot of courage from the non-religious parties to actually start and represent their public. Because if you're polling in parties that are not religious, you start from around the 60s something and you get to the 90s of percentage of supporters. But I also believe that they are sort of the front of the legislative effort, and they are arguing that they are held back by the religious parties, which we simply just don't accept. We don't believe that, with all due respect to a very small and getting smaller minority that objects civil marriage, they should get a veto right just because this is the way things are happening at the moment. So we're trying to put more pressure on the non-religious parties. I'm specifically not saying only non-ultra-Orthodox, because the National Religious Party is not a bit less conservative, sad to say at the moment. But this is where we stand, and this is also, it's a very complicated legislative effort.
What's Lieberman's position?
I didn't hear the question.
Do you want to say it again, Lara? What's Lieberman's position?
So Lieberman's position is interesting, because Lieberman's position is now for, during the last election cycle 8 weeks ago, we for the first time heard Lieberman support, in a rather vague way, but explicitly supports LGBTQ marriage, which was a first, an interesting first. So he's generally saying that he supports it for his own political reasons, which are fine, but he hasn't been successful in sort of making that a campaign issue for him. Maybe it will happen this time, I'm not sure. And also I believe that one of the things that we do see is that it's easier both for him and in general to block existing attempts to make things worse rather than to actually promote legislative changes for his community and for the broader community in Israel. So he is supportive in that realm. There has been almost 10 years ago some kind of legislative change that allows a very, very specific form of civil union for people who have no, if both people of the couple sort of are not associated with any religion, which you might say, okay, so that's an interesting point, but that's not a self-declarating situation. So you can't just declare yourself unaffiliated. That doesn't work. Each of the different religions needs to affirmatively accept you as not part of their community. So after a decade, we have about 100 people, not couples, who went through that system, meaning it's pretty much dead on arrival, doesn't really matter to anyone.
Thanks. That's.
I'm just a bit confused. Your last comment was about people having to prove that they're not associated with any particular religion in order to get married in a civil ceremony. Is that right?
So it's not really a civil ceremony; it's civil registration, but which is important. But again, it means that both people out of the couple, both of them, needs to go to different religious courts and affirmatively get approval that they are not a part of either the Jewish or the Christian or the Muslim communities, okay? And that's just like, that's not how people fall in love. Then it usually doesn't work.
Earlier on, you said that there is a greater percentage of people marrying outside of the rabbinical organization. So they don't have
Correct.
to go through the same scenario. They just get married in a registry office.
So they either get married abroad or they're becoming common law married, which doesn't exist sort of formally. It doesn't exist, like my national ID card says that I'm single, but if I were to get through a court needing to prove my marital status, court will say that I am common law married.
Or you would have to prove that you have no affiliation with a religion, in which case you would be recognized.
Yeah, but again, that it exists, but it's a super marginalized phenomena. So it's sort of some kind of a legal loophole, but it's not relevant for 99 point, I don't know how many nines later on of the people. It's not a big thing.
So we probably have to leave it there, unfortunately. So we can, talk to Michael and Paula, who've generously given their time as well. Thank you, Uri. We'll press goodbye now, and really thank you for taking the time out of your day. It's probably lunchtime there. Yeah.
It is.
Thank you very much for,
Bye-bye.